students, welcome to the video session. Today we are going to learn the story The Kabuliwala. The story is written by Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was a Bengali poet, writer and philosopher. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for Geetanjali, which is a collection of his poems. He wrote Janaganamana, which was adopted as India's national anthem. The Kabuliwala by Rabindranath Tagore is a touching story of the bond between a young girl and an Afghan peddler. It is narrated by the girl's father. At first, the girl, Minnie, is very frightened of Rahman, the Kabuliwala. But he wins her over, and the two of them spend happy moments together, with Rahman delighting in Minnie's innocent, childish chatter. One day, Rahman is arrested for attacking someone. Many years pass and he is forgotten. He is released after many years and asks to meet Minnie again. But Minnie's father declines as it is the day of her wedding. As Rahman turns to leave, he leaves a little package of dry fruits as a gift for Minnie. He then reveals that he has a daughter that he had to leave behind in Afghanistan. Minnie's father realizes that the Kabuliwala sees his own little child in Minnie and immediately calls for her. But so many years have passed that the once talkative child is now tongue-tied in the presence of her former playmate. Minnie's father then takes a share out of her wedding expenses and gives it to Rahman so that he can travel to Afghanistan and be reunited with his child. The story has been popular through the ages for its poignant narrative, which is told in Tagore's rich lyrical style. In his writing, he brings alive the buzz and excitement that is so much a part of an Indian street with its peddlers, merchants, and their customers. By weaving a story around relationships, Tagore forces his readers to question their prejudices and drives home the importance of opening their hearts and minds to people without judgment. In revealing that the Kabuliwala too is a father, he reminds us that regardless of one's status in society or our position in life, each person is ultimately defined by the bonds they forge and the relationships that they nurture. Now let us read the lesson.
One morning, I was hard at work when Minnie, my 5-year-old daughter, suddenly ran to the window crying, "A Kabuliwala! A Kabuliwala!" And indeed, in the street below was an Afghan peddler, dressed in loose, soiled clothing and a tall turban. He carried a bag on his back and boxes of grapes in his hand. Hearing her calls, the Kabuliwala turned and looked up at the child, who by now was terror-struck. She had a blind belief that little children were taken away in the large bag. After I made some small purchases from the peddler, he asked, "Where is the little girl, sir?" I wanted Minnie to lose her false fear and sent for her. She stood by my chair and looked at the Kabuliwala and his bag. He offered her nuts and raisins, but she only clung closer to me. My talkative child wouldn't speak a word. This was their first meeting. A few mornings later, however, I was startled to find Minnie laughing and talking with Rahman, the Kabuliwala. He won the child over with his offerings of nuts and fruit. In all her life, my small daughter had never found so patient a listener. The two were now great friends. They had many quaint jokes which amused them greatly. Giggling, Winnie would begin. Kabuliwala, oh Kabuliwala, what have you got in your bag? He would reply in his nasal voice, an elephant. Then the Kabuliwala would tease her. Well, little one, when are you going to your father-in-law's house? This question may have puzzled Minnie, but she would reply quickly, are you going there? Amongst the Kabuliwala's people, the words father-in-law's house also mean a jail. And so he would say, shaking his fist at an invisible policeman, ha! I will thrash my father-in-law. Picturing this, the pair would dissolve into peals of laughter. One day, I heard an uproar in the street and saw Rahman being led away by two policemen. His clothes were blood-stained, and one of the policemen carried a knife. A customer had made a purchase from Rahman, but had denied doing so. In the course of the quarrel, Rahman had struck him. Meanwhile, from a veranda came Minnie's familiar greeting. Kabuliwala, oh Kabuliwala. His face lit up as he turned to her. He had no bag under his arm today, so she could not talk about the elephant. She therefore proceeded to the next question. Are you going to your father-in-law's house? Laughing, he said, that is just where I'm going, little one. Then, seeing that the reply did not amuse Minnie, he held up his hands. I would have thrashed that old father-in-law, but my hands are bound. Rahman was sentenced to several years' imprisonment for having attacked a person violently. Time passed and he was forgotten. It was autumn and Minnie was going to be married. The morning of her wedding dawned and was filled with endless hurry and excitement. I was in my study, looking through the accounts, when someone entered, saluting respectfully. It was the Kabuliwala. At first, he was unrecognizable without his bag, long hair, and his cheerful spirit. But he smiled, and I knew him again. When did you come, Rahman? I asked. I was released from jail yesterday, he said. The words struck harshly upon my ears. There are ceremonies going on, I said. Perhaps you could come another day? Crestfallen, he left, but returned a moment later and said, I have brought something for the little one. Will you give it to her? I took the nuts and was going to pay him, but he stopped me and said, You are very kind, sir, but I am not here for profit. I do have a little girl in my own home. I think of her and bring this fruit to your child. Saying this, he brought out a small and dirty piece of paper from his robe. Unfolding it with great care, he smoothed it out on my table. It bore the impression of a little hand, not a photograph, not a drawing, merely the impression of an ink-smeared hand. He carried this memory of his own daughter next to his heart when he came to Calcutta to sell his wares. Tears came to my eyes. He was no longer just a poor Kabuli fruit seller. Like me, he was a father. I sent for Minnie immediately. Clad in a bride's red silk with the sandal paste on her forehead, Minnie came and stood shyly before me. Amazed, the Kabuliwala smiled and said, Are you going to your father in law's house? But Minnie now understood. She blushed at the question and stood before him with her face bowed down. When she left, Rahman sighed deeply. He realized that his daughter too must have grown up, and he would have to get to know her again. I handed him some money and said, "Go back to your daughter, Rahman, in your own country. May the happiness of your meeting bring good fortune to my child." Having made this present, I had to cut down on some of the festivities. I could not have the electric lights I had intended. But to me, the wedding feast was much brighter because in a distant land, a long lost father would meet his only child again.
Now let us go through the word meanings. Kabuliwala, a person from Kabul, which is in Afghanistan. Peddler, trader, soiled, dirty. Blind belief, to believe that something is true without any reason. False fear, it means that Minnie feared the Kabuliwala for no reason. Talkative, someone who talks a lot. Startled, surprised. Quaint, strange in an interesting manner. Nasal voice, a voice that sounded like he spoke through his nose. Peals of laughter, loud, repeated laughter. Thrashed, beat up badly, violently, with a lot of force. Unrecognizable. Minnie's father did not at once know who the man was. Struck harshly upon my ears, sounded very unpleasant. Crestfallen, looking and feeling disappointed. Impression, mark, or print. Calcutta, old name for Calcutta. Clad, dressed. Students, keep reading the lesson and learn the word meanings. Thank you for learning along. Thank you and have a great day.